Okay, so it's recording. So I don't know, do I say, you know, do I do any intros, or is that all a bit cheesy and unnecessary?
No, I think intros are nice. I think intros sort of set the scene for whoever's watching.
So Maxine, if you could just explain quickly who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I am Maxine Obeng, and I am the founder of Niche Careers Consultancy, and I'm also an assistant director in the NHS. So with Niche Careers Consultancy, it's a consultancy that supports primarily people from diverse backgrounds with career progression. So it offers bespoke things like one-to-one interview coaching, it offers one-to-one application writing, preparation with doing presentations, and how to just help accelerate your career basically in the right direction. That's what I do.
We've met before.
Yes.
We've worked a little bit together over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So you feel you have obviously lots of personal experience being a person from a diverse background, nursing, and seeing the good and bad of that as well in your career.
Yeah, do you know what? I do feel like I'm sort of in not a particularly unique position, but I think it's just because I've taken the step to outwardly speak about my experiences.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it's quite I like to use a bit of my own experience with career progression in the NHS, as well as my professional background, being that, you know, in my current role, actually in many of my previous roles, I've been kind of, you know, leading recruitment. So it's kind of trying to bring the two worlds together, and helping people based on what I've been through and what's worked for me, but also helping people from the perspective of actually, I know what I look for when I am on the other side of the table, being the recruitment manager. So I think those things definitely help go hand in hand to kind of give people a bit of that unique perspective, in helping them really land themselves in the right way and kind of navigate those additional barriers that come with being from a diverse background as well.
And I suppose when we've spoken before, you know, I've got a little bit of insight here because we've spoken before and you've shared information with me. And what was really surprising to me is what we're really talking about here is not the entry into nursing, like the diversity proportions there, but it's actually as careers progress, right?
Yeah.
We see those percentages drop, don't we?
I mean, massively drop. You know, we're quite lucky that we've got really good data about it now. So we're quite lucky that we've got, you know, REST data that kind of shows us the actual proportion of people from diverse backgrounds.
Sorry, you'd have to say that again. Matt was just calling me.
Oh,
we just turn this off.
I was just saying that, you know, we're quite lucky that now we've got really good data. So we've actually got REST data that shows us the proportion of people from diverse background at certain bands in the NHS. So it's actually, we're in a better position than we were, say, a few years ago, when people were just going based on how they felt, and there was nothing to really back up, you know, how they felt. You know, there was no stats, there was no data out there that people could actually sort of reference to or help explain their story. All we had was just what we've been through individually. So actually now we know for a fact that proportionally there should be more people from diverse background in these senior positions based on the number of the potential people who are from diverse backgrounds in the NHS. We would expect more at senior levels, but that just isn't the case. And I think that's what really sort of drove me to try to think, actually, what could I do? I mean, I'm just one person, you know, my niche company is just me as an individual entity. But I know that there are other people like myself who are also trying different avenues of helping people along and try to kind of make the journey to career progression more easier than I suppose what we've been through ourselves personally. And I think it's that kind of drives me to kind of do this, you know, in addition to the other things that I do in my normal job, as well as being a mom and all those things. So yeah, I think, you know, the data has definitely helped us along the way in trying to make very obvious and very blatant, the things that people from diverse backgrounds really do go through within the workplace, within the NHS.
So the need is clear now. There's data to prove it, and that's your motivation. That's great. So today we're going to talk about a topic which you introduced to me a few months ago.
Yes.
And
yes.
Trying to wrap my head around it, I suggested instead we do this and we talk about it.
Yeah.
So let's do that. If I ask the questions,
and
then that will drive the conversation, and we're going to talk about code switching.
Yes.
So it wasn't a phrase that I was aware of. Is it quite common as a phrase now? Is it becoming quite common?
So we've spoken about this before, where sometimes it's the coining of the phrase that might be relatively new, but actually the experience has always been there.
Right.
So for things like, for example, gaslighting, we didn't have that word to explain or express ourselves a few years ago, but now we have the word, and actually that makes it easier to evidence what someone's going through, and to challenge some of those things. Yeah. So I think code switching was one of those things as well. It's not a new phenomenon in that it's not something that's newly been experienced. I think many people who are not from the dominant culture probably do this or have been doing this for many, many years before I came along. And it's something that the name or the language use or the term just helps us to be able to really express and talk about really, what we've experienced.
So we talked about this briefly before, and I've just been thinking literally about, a couple of sentences of a definition of what code switching is. And I wondered if it might be useful if we discuss what it might not be, and that might help us talk about what it is. So code switching, is it when, so we're as humans, we're really good at mirroring behavior because it's a social requirement, right?
Yeah.
We're good at identifying how a person talks, and sometimes in order to get on with that person, and it might be an unconscious thing, we mirror their behavior. Is code switching different to that?
Yes, so it is different to that because of the intention behind the behavior change.
Right.
So I think that's what makes it different. So I think what you're referring to is almost somewhat of can be an automatic response sometimes. Yeah. So when you're having a discussion with somebody or you have numerous conversations, you pick up some of their dialects, you pick up some of their tone, you pick up their body language, it's mirroring, isn't it? So that's almost like an automatic behavior response based on the interaction that you're having with the individual. I think where code switching is different, is that it's a conscious change in behavior, right, in order to assimilate, in order to conform, in order to be accepted in a dominant culture different to your own. That's where it's quite different.
And that's how code switching is going to be known. I think the key word there that you used was intention.
Yeah, it's definitely it's intentional because it's it's the act of physically turning on and off something.
Yeah.
You have to put effort into doing that. It's not reflex. It can become reflex when you do it for such a long time, but actually it's still intentional in that you have to consciously decide that, okay, my surrounding is different now, my environment is changing now, so therefore I must now become this person that's able to be comfortable and be accepted in this new environment that I'm now going into. So it's very intentional in that way.
Would you say you've experienced it, or have you code switched?
Yeah, I don't remember. I was actually thinking in my 10 years, I don't remember not code switching in
really?
the work.
Right, okay.
I think when we kind of get more into what it is and what it looks like, I think you might understand a bit more in terms of, why it's such an everyday thing for me, especially anyway, for my peers, my friends, other colleagues, it's almost, it can become reflex, but it's still an intentional decision to change an aspect of you, whether it's behavior, characteristic, or some function, in order for you to feel more less different.
So it sounds like it's something that actually many people will normalise. Do you want to? Do you have an example you can share?
Yeah, I do. So for an example, and these are based on, personal things. So not just myself, but friends and other people that I know. So my husband, for example, I give him as an example for this one. So we're Ghanaian. So I was born in Ghana, West Africa. His parents are Ghanaian as well. So in our culture, you would often you would give your child their name based on the day of the week that they're born,
Okay.
which is, it's a cultural, it's a traditional thing that we do in Ghana. So he was born on Friday. So every Ghanaian that's born on Friday, their name is actually Kofi. So Kofi, Kofi. Every Ghanaian, so any Ghanaian that you know, if you ask them what day of the week they're born, and they tell you the day of the week they're born, there is a name linked to that day of the week. So in his case, his parents gave him another more traditional British name, well, as the name Kofi. So what he found was when he started applying for jobs, he wasn't getting sort of shortlisted through to interviews with the name Kofi. So he started putting on his application the name Rodney. So his other name's actually Rodney. So when he started doing that, he found that he was able to, kind of be, getting it into the space where he can be interviewed and sort of, get to actually get in the room and be seen. Yeah. And even further from that, he then found that when he was in those spaces, when he was clearly the person that wasn't from the dominant culture that he was within, he would introduce himself as Rodney. So a lot of his work colleagues don't know his name as Kofi, because obviously he works in predominantly white environment. So he would never introduce himself as Kofi in a work setting. He would always go by Rodney. That is a prime example of assimilating to the dominant culture in order to feel accepted and to feel less different in the space that you're in. And I know a lot of people that do that. That's okay.
That's quite such a sort of obvious example, and there'd be sort of other names we could use for around that. How did that make him feel, having to change his name or use another name?
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things that, like I said, because we've had to do it so much that I don't even think that it resonates as something that's much it's not even that significant, because it's just something that we've just had to do. So a lot of people wouldn't even think that's code switching, because they think, oh, it must be something bigger. But to us, we've been doing it for so long, so many years, and of just kind of like conforming, that it's very normal. I know for him personally, a couple of years ago, with the Black Lives Matter movement, he spoke about his experience of, changing his name at work and not feeling able to sort of, be proudly himself as Kofi. And I think that's probably the first time where he really reflected on the fact that, wow, we're still in society where, in order for me to feel comfortable and be accepted, I have to change or go by another name. When actually my preferred name, which is a name that everybody else who knows him, is Kofi. So I think, that was probably the first time where he actually sat back and thought, wow, it's still really powerful that we still live in this world where that's still my experience as an individual. But yeah, that's one very, very little example, but it's something that a lot of people do within the workplace.
What's keeping this within the nursing community of employers and employees, what's the solution here? Because obviously this is not a long-term solution for people to change their names, right?
No, absolutely not.
So how do we deal with this? How do we overcome it? I guess the first step is giving a name to it, which helps us raise awareness. On both sides, that those who are code switching and those who maybe are creating a space that makes it necessary for people to code switch. How do we overcome these challenges?
I think, I think, I think, like you said, just having the right language to express is a massive step, and it really helps. I think what's even more worrying is that within the healthcare setting, we have a lot of people who are from diverse backgrounds, who are all actively, who are different or acting different or behaving differently because of their work environment. And the reason why I thought this topic was even more interesting was just thinking about it from the aspects of career progression, and actually how this then impacts, potentially hinders our potential for career progression, given that we're not able to present as our authentic self within the workplace.
Yeah, authenticity. So we talked about intention earlier, and I just find, words really help us sort of focus in on the key issues here. And so I think authenticity is a topic within this. It's actually a topic that's of interest to me outside of this specific issue, but being our authentic selves is key, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really interesting to me, because I think it might have been 2 or 3 years ago when this, it's not a new term, is it, authenticity, but it became like a buzzword where everybody was like, I'm my authentic self and all this and all of that. But what's really interesting to me is the privilege in that.
Yeah.
It is a privilege to be able to present as yourself and to be seen and accepted as yourself. So I always sort of caution, my colleagues and friends who are not from potentially, as privileged backgrounds, whether it's their race, whether it's their sexuality, whatever it is. I always have a word of caution when they say things like, you have to be authentically yourself, because actually it's easier said for some than it is done by others. And that's a really key thing to be mindful of when you talk about, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Just be yourself, you're going to be accepted. And because it's not that, is it? It's not, that's not the experience of many.
And I suppose that's why those who can talk about authenticity and think, well, sure, I'm pretty much always able to be my authentic self.
Absolutely.
I suppose often this, the discussion about all of these topics being a bit woke, right?
Yeah.
Come from those to whom these things come quite easily. Do I need to code switch? I can't remember last time where that was anything for me. I talked about mirroring behavior. Yeah, sure, I'm aware of that as a human trait. And the same about authenticity. I get it. I don't really have to think too hard about practicing it. And therefore, and I think it's maybe the accusation of some conversations just being, it's just wokery. Might be coming from those who find these things easy.
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. And the matter of fact is that there are so many other examples, and there are so many people who are experiencing this, or who are having to do this to protect themselves and to safeguard themselves from being so exposed, which is really sad, because actually what you're saying is that we're still in a society or in a workplace, taking it back to healthcare settings, where we feel vulnerable in being ourselves. Right. So even things down to how we do our hair, work with our hair, we're thinking about that, because we know that we're going to get to work and so and so is going to say, oh, this is really nice, or this is really different, or whatever the comment is. But it's highlighting an aspect of us which, because of the environment that we're in, we would rather not have highlighted. Do you know what I mean? So it's those things that can be very uncomfortable. So therefore, as people who are different, because everyone's different, being from diverse backgrounds make us more different, we're almost dimming ourselves. We're dimming our light, we're dimming ourselves so that we can just conform, just be seen as everybody else. because everybody else, that dominant culture is it's what is the accepted culture.
Yeah.
So we want to be accepted so that we can therefore be less different, and therefore maybe potentially be in a position where we're seen to be like the people who are recruiting us.
So it's,
that like-mindedness.
yeah, seems to be the way. What's required here, there's a twofold requirement. Courage for those who wish to present their authentic selves, and creating a safe space, the employers needing to create a safe space to allow those people to be courageous. That seems to me to be the two steps that need to take place here for change to come about. But easy to tell somebody to be courageous, and
yes, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think psychological safety goes a long way, and you know, if you've got situations or settings or workplaces where people see how people who are different are treated, they are less likely to be able to feel courageous to be authentically themselves in the workplace. And you know, I think unfortunately there are a lot of places that just aren't tolerant of difference, and then that's a really sad place to be. But I think unfortunately that's the world that we still live in. So when we talk about discrimination and racism, and you know, it shows up for people in different ways, especially, you know, in today's day. I feel like it shows up in very different ways than it did 50, 60, 70 years ago. Now there are more of these undercurrent of things, and people have had to adjust. So people from diverse backgrounds have had to adjust how they are in order to be safe at work. And I think one of those things that have had to happen is this code switching. You know, it's almost a protective thing, actually. You know, if I sound like them, they're not going to know that I'm different. Yeah. They might think I'm like them, and they might therefore, you know, not target me for certain things. So actually, it's more of a protective thing. And so I think you're right. It's about creating that safety, and employers being really mindful of creating an environment where people feel able to be different and to be seen and to be heard and to be authentic. But it's difficult. This is, you know, you're talking about you're undoing years of damage here. So it's difficult. Yeah.
I guess then, talking about these things, having words, we talked about at the beginning, words are really important. It's how we communicate ideas. Is key. And you know, the NHS has its people promise. Yeah. And inclusivity is one of those. Feeling that you belong. Is enough being done? And how do messages like this, given, you know, the challenges that nursing faces anyway, just literally trying to do the job with the staff numbers and all the other challenges they face, how do messages like this, how can they be communicated? So, you know, is the NHS doing enough yet? And how can it get that message out more without it just being called wokery or, oh, you know, another PDF toolkit shared around with, you know, ways of behaviour and dismissed in that way?
I really think that it comes from role modelling that behaviour all throughout the organisations, and actually all throughout the NHS as a whole. I think it needs to be role modelled so that the people who are doing the work and the people who are doing the care and offering, you know, that personalised care and that patient-centred approach, those are the people that we need to be supporting and safeguarding. So I think actually they need to see throughout, from, you know, from their level through to board level, that this acceptance of difference is embraced and encouraged and supported and praised and promoted. They need to see all those behaviours that reflect acceptance of difference. And I think that's really going to be the only thing that's going to make people then feel able to be themselves and be different and be authentic in that. So I think, yeah, definitely role modeling, you know, showing acceptance, But until then, people are still gonna go to work and, you know, be one way. And it's really crazy to me because it happens at all levels. So, you know, I'm now at my position that I'm at, and like I said at the beginning, I can't tell you a time where I have not in some way or form code switched from how I would be in my normal life, you know, with friends and, you know, peers or whatever it is, family, to how I am in the workplace. And one of the things that is even more interesting about this topic was the question of, is it code switching or is it just professionalism? So I came across this blog on LinkedIn. I thought that's a really interesting twist on it, right? And I think my challenge to that is, no, it's not just professionalism, because you're changing, because that question in itself is almost making it it's normalizing, or it's trying to presume that difference or authenticity in different people therefore is unprofessional, you know?
Yeah, and why shouldn't we demand that we can be ourselves at work?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
When you think,
I mean,
it was one, I think in our conversation we've had before, might be wrong here, but I think you said that even choosing, so say you take a packed lunch to work,
oh god,
it might influence the choice of what you put in your packed lunch. So, you know, if that person that might say, no, this is just about professional behaviour, I wonder if they make decisions in the morning about what goes in their packed lunch.
Yes. I saw your story, Matt. So, and my friend is gonna kill me for telling the story, but I have to. It's so perfect. I have to tell it. So, she sent me a voice note that she was at work, and she said, "Oh, Maxine, you never guess what? I had packed myself the perfect lunch for work. You know, one of our traditional dishes in Ghana was like spinach and I think yam or something like that, which is like a potatoey dish with spinach, you know, in a sauce.
Yeah.
And actually she's pregnant, so she's been like craving these really rich meals during the day. So she had packed that for lunch and she was looking forward to it. She sent me a message at 11 a.m. saying, you never guess what, Maxine, my manager's just called a team lunch. a group team lunch,
right?
Which means that I'm now rushing back out to Tesco to find a sandwich to buy.
Like
because there's no way, because there's no way I'm eating that yam and spinach in that team lunch situation with my colleagues. I mean, that's how powerful is and how it plays out in the workplace.
Yeah, cucumber sandwich only to fit in.
Yeah, to fit in. To be normal, to be less different.
Yeah.
And that's just our reality. You know, it's our day to day.
And that's not an expectation of professionalism, is it? You know, that's no one can.
No, I think if you're having to change the meals that you're eating around your colleagues, that's not professionalism. That's when it becomes different. That's when it becomes about the environment not being safe enough for you to actually be yourself at work. And you know, it's not to say that even in my experience of behaving differently, it's not to say that, you know, the way that I would behave with my friends or the people is unprofessional. It's just that actually I feel more comfortable to be, you know, this persona when I'm in the workplace compared to being myself as I would maybe talk, or as I would maybe dress, or, you know, just different. You know, it plays out in different ways, doesn't it? And it's just how it is, unfortunately.
So I guess a powerful way of dealing with this, all of us, something that we can all do, and I think you mentioned this earlier and referred to it, is celebrate difference. Because if we're celebrating something, it's not just normalizing it, accepting it. It's saying this is actually a positive thing.
Yes. Gosh, yes, absolutely. absolutely. And
That's
I
something that we
think
can all, that everybody can do, can't they?
yeah,
Love your hair. Oh wow, what are you eating? What's that? That looks great.
yeah,
How do you cook? How do you what can you share that, share the recipe with me?
yeah. Or even just not even say anything. It's
Well,
just
that's
even
what
just
I mean. Yeah,
yeah.
what's is it about accepting quietly, or is it about celebrating? And what do you
I
think?
think yeah, I feel like there is a way of doing it, and there is a balance. So it's really funny. So like things like it was summer. Well, it's still summer now, and I kept seeing online this this post that went viral that was kind of saying, dear white colleagues, I know the sun is out, but this isn't your chance to tell me that you're almost as brown as I am. It's just it's those things where actually, it's there is a way of doing this without making it like a gimmick or making it
Yeah,
feel disingenuine. And I think people can sense when it's like that, and they can also sense when actually this person really cares, and
yeah,
they want to know the recipe because actually it looks quite tasty to them.
yeah,
There is the way of doing it without it being fake or just to be seen
yeah,
woke or whatever it is.
yeah. Because
But
then it won't work, will it? I suppose. The
yeah,
minute it's seen as
exactly.
wokery, it will be condemned.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, one shoe, one cap doesn't fit all in this scenario. It's going to be different people are going to want different things from what that looks like if it's reversed. But
Mm.
I think the main thing is coming at it from a place of being genuine. And I think all of us can tell when someone's being, real, or when they're just kind of saying things just to be seen to have said it. So
Mm.
we can all feel when it's come from a place of meaningness and all that thing. So I think that's probably it will be different for everybody, but I think it's about being genuine and being intentional and having good intention behind the act of doing things differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked. I mean, we're running out of time. We've talked about just getting on in day to day.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about career progression and how it
Yes.
can impact that, and where it can where it plays, or where code switching plays a role in career progression, where it shouldn't be playing a role.
Yeah. I think it's so at the end of my sort of thinking about it, I think it can be a massive hindrance actually to career progression.
Right.
Because if you think about the privilege, which I've said before, the privilege of being authentically yourself. So what that does is it allows you to make genuine, effortless connection with people who are like-minded to you, or actually just the people who can see you for who you are, and therefore, you therefore then appear more trustworthy. You appear more of a genuine person. People can see your personality. They can understand where you're coming from. They can understand sort of like the meaning behind your behaviors, and therefore can actually then account for you almost, because they can really know who you are.
Yeah.
So that there's so many benefits to being able to be authentically yourself. So if you think about people who are not able to be that way, who are always having to almost switch to a behavior that makes them appear less different, then of course there's going to be a hindrance. So all those things that allow you to be authentically yourself, all the benefits of that includes actually people thinking of you when there's post-career opportunities coming up. People, you're more likely to present better in interviews because actually you're just being yourself. It comes naturally to you. So when you can't do those things, people just know you as, oh, that's Maxine from work. They don't know that, oh, that's Maxine, she's got 2 kids and she likes going out at the weekend. She things that make you, the personal attributes of you become dimmed because you don't feel safe to open up in your workplace and to be
Okay.
seen for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. They don't see the whole you.
They don't see the whole you. And so all those things, and we know that those things make a massive difference when it comes to career progression, when it comes to your reputation, when it comes
We feel we know that person more.
identity. Yeah, absolutely. Your identity in the workplace is based around those things. So if you're not able to turn up as that person, then you are going to be at a disadvantage massively.
And that's much more subtle. We talked about changing your name earlier, clear, obvious, blatant thing to do, a blatant activity.
Yeah.
This, what we've just been talking about, is much more subtle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Much more subjective. It's about what's not done. It's about what isn't said. You know, changing your name is an active process.
Yeah.
What we've just been talking about is a process that isn't happening at all.
Yeah.
So unless it is explained to you, you could well be unaware of it.
Yeah, exactly. And you could just, you might work with colleagues who you think, of course I know who so and so is, but actually, what do you know about that person except for just their name and, I don't know, what you see them bring to work for lunch, which might be not actually what they really want to be eating anyway. So it plays in that way, and it plays out when it comes to career progression in that way as well, because people just can't say, oh, I know this person, I know that she likes this, she does this, she attends this on the weekend, those things that people can really grasp on and say, I can trust this person can do the job because I know what they stand for, I know their values. Just is harder for people from diverse backgrounds because, they are constantly code switching to feel more accepted. So when you do that, you lose that authenticity part of you.
Yeah. I feel like we've only just started talking about this.
Yeah. Go on.
I'm on Zoom time, and I can see that it's telling me to either upgrade or we're gonna get cut off.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, I think what we discovered, part of the solution to all of this, is just talking about it and sharing these stories.
Absolutely.
So the subtleties of experiences don't go unsaid.
Yeah.
They are shared around and talked about, because then they become real for everyone and not just a term.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you see your colleague suddenly, coming to work and she looks different, don't question it. Just let it be, just let it be. It might be that day she felt like, do you know what, I don't want to have to pretend. I'm just gonna, wear this color because I feel like wearing this color. I'm just gonna, whatever it is, I'm gonna just have my hair this way today because I want to do it. Don't, just let it be. Don't question it. Don't make it an event. Don't make it a thing. Just let it be. And it's that acceptance that, just let people become comfortable within their difference. Being comfortable in your difference is a really, really hard thing to do. And it's an uncomfortable space to sit in. But I think that's where we need to head to, definitely.
I think that's a great place to stop as well.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Maxine.
No worries, Matt. You take care.